interestingly, I have never felt this good after failing before. And whilst that is a little bit of a fallacy, because the beginning of my workout was a huge success, the end was not so great. And the end did leave me somewhat deep in thought and forced me to greatly ponder where I currently stand with my deadlift and how I want to approach my deadlift going forward. However, my experience with the squat was sensational. And I have to take into consideration that I am deadlifting after squatting. Naturally, being slightly fatigued, it's going to change a lot. It's going to change a lot. But I feel good. I'm not going to sit here and lie. I feel really good. This morning, I got up at a decent hour. I got one meal in before getting to the gym. Unfortunately, I couldn't squeeze in two. Got a couple good walks in. So I woke up this morning with a lot of purpose. I knew that I wanted to attack these squats like nobody's business. And I wanted to do myself proud, especially after my experience yesterday, which in hindsight was blown out of proportion, dramatically blown out of proportion by myself. But again, it's a lesson learned nonetheless. So yeah, I've been left in a position with my deadlifts, pondering whether I back off them from a weight perspective in order to focus on my technique more. Because today, for the first time in a very long time, my technique was, as soon as I fatigued, it was at a point where I would call it terrible. Now, I feel, when I deadlift, I feel like I'm naturally a very back-dominant deadlifter. However, that has seldom, if ever, allowed me to excuse poor form. Whilst I feel confident in my deadlifts that have good form, that my back is in a safe position and I am being back dominant safely, it's not an excuse. It's not an excuse to allow my spine to round in the way that I did today. And whilst it's not worrying, because at no point did I experience any discomfort, did I feel like I was in any immediate danger, it's not something I want to get too comfortable with, and it's not something that I want to continue to do, especially when it comes to taking a weight for reps and taking what for me is a decent weight for reps. I don't want to get into the habit of any spinal flexion at all. For a 1 rep max, I'm not gonna shoot myself about it. I'm not gonna cry about it. But for reps, that's not the path I want to go down. So I'm in a bit of a predicament with that, but not in a negative way. Like, I'm almost certain I know what I'm going to do with regards to the deadlifts. I mean, this first training block, I didn't have an extreme amount of clarity on what I wanted to do for my deadlift variations. And that has led to a little less deadlift volume, or quality volume, I should say, that may have made the difference today. However, going forward, I know I want to practice the skill of sumo. I want to have that skill in the locker to some capacity. I'm not claiming I'm ever going to be amazing at it. It's just a skill I want to practice. So going into my next training block, and for the rest of this training block, I know that whenever I have a variation day, I'm going to be attacking the sumo. And a big reason for that is because I feel quite weak in my adductor insertions into my hip, my hamstring insertions into my glute, and just those areas there, probably from the amount of conventional I've been doing. So I'm glad that it gave me clarity in that. And not only that, today, going forward, I want this video in many ways to serve as a reminder, because no matter how I feel going forward and going into max testing week, as it stands, unless something dramatic happens, as it stands, I'm not going to test my deadlift. I'm not going to. I don't see a need right now for me to have a heavier 1 rep max deadlift going into my next training block. I would much rather be able to move the weight that I'm currently moving at a much nicer tempo and much better form, much more consistently for the amount of reps. And seeing how quickly my deadlift exploded in the last 3 months, I'm not in a rush to increase my deadlift at all. I would much rather master my current working weights. So it's interesting. It's very interesting to see how the mind works in that respect. You have a great experience under the squat rack. You have a good but not so great experience on top of the deadlift bar. And because you're in a good place, a good state of mind, you're able to very quickly see answers and see silver linings to what may have otherwise been a failure. Unlike yesterday, whereas the first thing I experienced was what I created in my head to be a failure, which was by no means a failure, which then led to just a calamitous rest of the day, which, like I said yesterday, is cowardly, is poor on my part. And I got a really interesting comment from a watcher of mine. Shout out him, because he's always active in the comment sections. And he made a point that like, I resonate with more than he could ever imagine, and more than I probably give off in these videos. Even as somebody who considers himself very mindful, very stoic, hardworking, and pretty much always on an even keel, I find myself extremely susceptible to momentary lapses of said mindfulness, said stoicism, said discipline, however you want to put it. And those lapses in concentration can lead to like what I would consider an outburst. Yesterday being an outburst. And it's not always an outburst of aggression or frustration or even sadness or anything like that. Yesterday, it was an outburst of negative thought. That's it. There's nothing else complicated to it. Yesterday, something happened and I reacted to it in a way that is akin to an aggressive outburst, but simply just with negative thought and not giving myself enough respect for what I had done on that day. And when I look at my life, I'm susceptible with that frustration, from a frustration perspective, with my dog, with, I'm trying to think what else. Not much else. Funnily enough, the dog is probably one of the few things that can get me to outburst. But just in life in general, I won't sit here and lie. Like, it's a constant battle with oneself. It's a constant fight to be as reasonable as possible. As I'm learning more about the concept from Marcus Aurelius' meditations of us being reasonable beings and beings of reason, it's becoming more and more clear to me, and I'm becoming more and more aware of how every breathing moment is in many ways a constant battle to be reasonable and to err on the side of reason rather than on the side of instinct and impulse. Because fundamentally we are animals, but the thing that separates us from wild animals is our ability to be conscious, our ability to see reason, right? And that's what unifies all us human beings as well. So yeah, man, it's today and yesterday is crazy. It's crazy how like the same person can have two polarizing experiences based on the way in which they broke down and compartmentalized that's the word I was looking for, the way in which they perceived their experience. Today was no less of a failure than yesterday. However, today I feel great, and yesterday I felt terrible. Why is that? Because my perspective changed. My perspective on today was completely different to my perspective on yesterday. And if my perspective on yesterday was akin to my perspective on today, then yesterday would have been a huge success. If you kept up with that, then kudos to you. But I know most of you will catch my drift. Yeah, man, it's a crazy thing being a human being. Crazy and beautiful all at the same time. And what makes us one is our ability to see reason and our constant fight against impulse and pleasure-seeking desires, those animalistic instincts for comfort. So, on that note, if you made it this far, thank you very, very much. I appreciate you more than you can imagine. I'm very grateful that you took the time out of your day to watch or listen to my content, consume it in any way, shape, or form. For that, I thank you, and I shall see you tomorrow.